the meeting to order. This is the September 16th meeting. We'll note that all commissioners are present. First item of business is the order of business. Are there any additions or changes to the order of business? Mr. Colling?
Mr. President, yes, there are two items that I would add to the agenda. I believe both of them have been placed at your table this evening. The first is a notice of award for the 18-inch tie-in from the half-million-gallon water storage tank. I believe the bid tabulation was placed in your packets, but in front of you, you do have the notice of award that does award this project to Merriman Excavation. And then also added to the agenda, the consent agenda for tonight, is a task order issued to HDR Engineering. This would be task order 7 for HDR. This is for the MS4 audit that we have been notified of. The state will be doing an audit of our municipal stormwater system, and the HDR engineering firm will be assisting us with that audit. The task order is an amount not to exceed $5,000.
Okay. And both these you wish to add to the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. Are there any other changes to the order of business? Hearing none, the chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
So we have the motion and the second. Commissioner Steiner was the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckart?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So we'll go to the non-timetable agenda, and the first item there is the financial report. Mrs. Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I'll highlight a few items from our financial report through August. We'll begin with the general fund report. With 67% of our year completed, our property taxes equal $3.3 million, and we're 97% collected compared to budget. Our other taxes and fees, which include financial institution tax and franchise fees, is $206,000 and 85% collected compared to budget. Our intergovernmentals, which include revenues we receive from state and local governments, such as the highway distribution tax and the oil production tax, totals $2.3 million and is 57% collected compared to budget. Our licenses, fees, and services, which includes building permit revenue, oil royalties, and administrative fees, is 66% collected compared to budget. Our building permit revenue is up $252,000 over last year. This category also includes our municipal court fines, which are up $28,000 over last year. Our total general fund revenues equal $8.1 million through August, and we're 60% collected compared to budget. Our general fund expenses in our general government, which includes administration, court, finance, and buildings and grounds, is 70% expended compared to budget. The overage here is due mostly to timing. In our public safety, which includes police and fire, is 58% expended compared to budget. Our engineering and streets, which also includes community development, is 76% expended compared to budget. The overage here is due to plan reviews in our engineering department and budgeted equipment purchases in the street department. Our cultural services, which includes the museum and forestry, is 64% expended compared to budget. And our total general fund expenses equal $8.8 million through August, and we're 65% expended compared to budget. In our enterprise funds, our water and wastewater revenues equal $5.9 million through August, and we're 81% collected compared to budget. Our expenses and capital outlays total $10.5 million, which is 144% expended compared to budget. But this does include a $4.6 million transfer to our building construction fund. It is our state revolving fund loan proceeds for the water reclamation facility. And so without that, we're 81% expended compared to budget. In our solid waste fund, our revenue is $3.1 million, which is 79% collected compared to budget. And our expenses and capital outlays total $1.7 million, which is 47% expended compared to budget. In our sales tax reports, in our 1% sales tax fund, we received $523,000 of revenue in August, which is up 1.9% for the year. This sales tax is broken down into three groups. The first is the 50% share, which is for street projects and infrastructure. We are budgeting an infrastructure project total of $850,000 for 2013, but no direct transfer to the street projects fund. In our 20% share, this is for job creation and senior programs. This segment funds Stark Development, Elder Care, and the RSVP subsidy, along with the Senior Citizen and Southwest Regional Grant programs. The expenses through August total $606,000. And the third segment is our 30% share, which is set aside for capital improvements. The $50,000 expended here is a portion of the final BAC pledge payment. And in our 0.5% sales tax, we received $262,000 of revenue in August, which is also up 1.9% for the year. We are budgeting a $4 million transfer to the Public Works building construction in 2013. In our hospitality tax, we received $87,000 of revenue in August, which is down 13% over last year. Our expenses include $1 million for the final BAC pledge payment, a $50,000 subsidy for the Stark County Veterans Memorial, and $37,000 for the environmental assessment at the airport to upgrade to jet service. In our occupancy tax, our revenues totaled $56,000 in August, which is down 35.5% over last year. Our expenses here include $216,000 to the CVB for their subsidy, $60,000 for the special events grant, and a $5,000 subsidy to the Rough Rider Commission, and a $5,000 payment for the downtown revitalization contract. Our street projects report, we received $267,000 in revenues, and we've expended $1.2 million towards those projects through August. And in our development impact fee program, we have $1.2 million in projects that are yet to be reimbursed, and $3.2 million that will hopefully be assessed this year. Those are some of the highlights of the financial statements. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Are there any comments or questions regarding the financial report? Did you see anything that concerned you other than sales tax just running barely about 2% ahead of last year?
Nothing else. We should see our first payment for the new formula from the state in September. We expect to see that on Wednesday.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you.
President Johnson,
Mr. Kessel.
it happens so rarely, but it does happen on occasion where you make a slight mistake. We need a vote on the consent agenda.
Well, I was just getting to that. I just thanked her. Oh, on the consent agenda? We
consent
voted on
agenda.
the consent agenda, didn't we?
You took a vote on amending the agenda, the order of business, but not on the consent, on approving the consent.
Ah, the
agenda.
order of business. Oh, I did make a mistake. Well, thank you, Mr. Kessel.
I begged Attorney Colling to let me be the one to tell you that.
Well, pardon me. You thought I did too?
I didn't think it was a mistake.
You didn't think
So
it was
you
a
missed it.
mistake?
You just missed it.
Thank you, Mrs. Dukart. It was a mistake. So we'll go back to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? Not, would there be a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
We have the motion, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner? Aye. Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Now, we've heard the financial report. Would there be a motion to approve the report as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion regarding the financial report? Hearing none again, we'll vote. Mr. Oltmanns?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson? Mr. Steiner? Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. Continuing with our mistake-riddled meeting, we'll go to item B, Mid-Continent Cable Television franchise. This is an ordinance. It's 1523. It is a second reading and final passage of this ordinance. Mr. Colling, anything you'd like to add by way of introduction?
Mr. President, Commissioners, as you're aware, this ordinance provides for a cable television franchise for Mid-Continent Communications. There will be a new cable television provider within the city of Dickinson, assuming you approve this franchise ordinance. The terms of the franchise are substantially similar to those for the existing cable television provider. The ordinance that you have before you is substantially unchanged from first reading. We did modify a few minor provisions as to the term of the franchise. Under the modifications, this franchise will terminate at the same time that the consolidated cable television franchise terminates. We would then be able to renegotiate both of those franchises at the same time. Also, we did provide a provision in here that, under the franchise, each of the cable television franchisees provide access channels, public access channels. One of those is Channel 19, on which this commission meeting is being broadcast. And we did request from Mid-Continent that when they number their channels, that their public access channel for the city commission meetings would also be numbered Channel 19, so we can continue to refer to that in the manner we have, not create confusion among the public as to where they can access the community information in city commission meetings. Other than that, there are no changes to the franchise ordinance, and city staff would recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding this proposed ordinance, 1523, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Anybody from the public? There's no one from the public. Is there any comments or questions by city commissioners?
I'll move we approve second reading, final passage of 1523.
Second it.
We have the motion and the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We move to item C, and this is wellhead spacing. And Mr. Colling, are you introducing this item? Or
Mr.
Mr.
President,
Seebuck is?
Chief Seevock will introduce
Okay.
this item.
Thank you. Chief Seebuck.
President Johnson, Commissioners, this is a slight wording change to the ordinance that's in existence to clarify some areas that were not defined well enough. Service wells being one of those, saltwater injection wells and well sites, addressing the concerns with above-ground tank batteries in addition to the wellhead itself needed a bit of clarification. And then the use groups that we intend this to affect needed a bit of clarification, and that's what this wording change does. Mr. Colling, the version that I have shows that there was two other slight changes we talked about and two deletions. Industrial uses, inhabitable properties, actually all covered by the other wording that we had put in there, so that would be just a minor deletion of those two things.
Yes, Mr. President, Commissioners, if you look at Section 2 of the ordinance, it is paragraph A on page 2 in your materials. The use groups that the chief refers to in your version has commercial, office or retail use, industrial use, and habitable structure as the added language. And I understand from Chief Seevock that we can't take industrial use and inhabitable structure out of that ordinance, that would not be required at this time.
That's correct. Industrial use groups would actually be where you would find a well site and all of that, and that's addressed by code, and those spacing requirements for accessory structures to a type of well site would be addressed under industrial use groups. Inhabitable properties, and Mr. Cortana and I had a discussion about that. I think that's actually addressed already in the type of use groups that we're putting in there. So it's a clarification. We're getting better at this as we go, if you will, and it's a clarification of what we've had in place that needed a bit more defined language for better understanding.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Cole, anything else you'd like to add?
If I could just add, Mr. President, Commissioners, to the chief's comments. One of the material changes made by this ordinance is to define what a well is. And under this ordinance, if it is passed, it includes any oil well, gas well, or service well. Service wells are defined in the code as essentially saltwater injection wells. Historically, the city has not included service wells, injection wells, within the definition of a well under Title 40. So we have allowed, on certain instances, inhabitable structures, residences, or other buildings to be within the limited radius, within 300 feet of a service well. If this ordinance is adopted, we would no longer allow inhabitable structures, residences, or other structures within 300 feet of a saltwater injection well. Some of our thinking has changed in the past few months and years on this because of some fairly substantial fires and accidents that have occurred on saltwater injection wells. Just within western North Dakota, there have been a couple of instances of lightning strikes that have hit saltwater injection wells and created some fairly substantial fires. We obviously don't want that to happen within the city of Dickinson, within our city limits, and therefore would be requesting the authority under this ordinance to prohibit residences or other structures within that 300-foot radius around a existing saltwater injection well. We believe that's warranted because of the recent incidents within western North Dakota, but it would be a change from the way that we have done business in the past, since we do have some saltwater injection wells that are located closer than 300 feet to existing structures. But I'd be happy to try to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Colleen. Comments or questions here?
Mr. Colleen, this would address future development but doesn't change any past development. Those would be grandfathered in even if that structure was removed and a new one put in place, or does that change the dynamics of that?
Well, we do have cases where there are houses and other structures within 300 feet of an existing service well. Because we have platted those and in many cases issued building permits and certificates of occupancy within that distance, those structures are going to remain. And there's not a whole lot that we can do to go back and try to vacate those unless we want to condemn those or something like that, which I don't believe is on the table.
Right.
So the enforcement of this is going to be a prospective measure for future developments that come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and before this commission. We would look at prohibiting development within 300 feet of an existing service well.
And Mr. Colleen, what is the ordinance number here?
Mr. President, this will be ordinance 1525.
Okay. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding ordinance 1525, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Anybody? There's no one from the public that wishes to comment regarding 1525. Are there other questions or comments by other city staff or city commissioners?
Mr. President, move to approve ordinance 1525.
Second.
We have the motion to approve the first reading of 1525 and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we will vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Olmans?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Item D is another ordinance. Again, first reading. This is regarding homeless shelters. Mr. Colleen, are you introducing this?
Mr. President, I'll
You
present
take
that.
this? All right, Mr. Curtin.
Mr. President, Commissioners, the Dixon, last year, Dickinson Churches United for Homeless came in front of the City Commission to request a temporary homeless shelter. At that time, we didn't have a specific ordinance, and we addressed it through the temporary use permit process, and we imposed reasonable conditions to do so, with the expectation that if things went well, that we would craft a permanent ordinance the next year. In front of you is that permanent ordinance. I will highlight specific portions of the ordinance and be available for any questions you have. The purpose for this is to allow temporary homeless shelters for transient and homeless individuals within our community. A permit is required. No person should operate a homeless facility unless they receive a permit. To obtain a permit, they must appear in front of the City Commissioners, have a permit adopted by resolution after a public hearing, and with that resolution, the City Commission and staff can attach reasonable conditions that they deem necessary to ensure the public health, safety, and general welfare. The application process for that specifies a minimum of 3 requirements, and I'll read those. The physical structure in which the temporary homeless shelter will be operated in needs to be addressed. Identify the temporary homeless shelter coordinator for each of the structures or facilities in which the temporary homeless shelter will be operated at, and a manual of rules and regulations acceptable to the city for the operation of the temporary homeless shelter for each of the structures in which the temporary homeless shelter will be operated in. The process for a permit for anybody that wants to operate a facility is as follows. Minimum of 10 days prior to the public hearing, which would be through the City Commission, will notify people within 300 feet. That would be for each facility. If they have multiple facilities, then we would notify people within 300 feet of all the facilities that are proposed. After the public hearing, the City Commission may grant that permit as long as it meets the requirements in the Dixon City Code and the applicant appears responsible to operate the facility in the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare. Prior to beginning an operation, the city building department and fire department will inspect the facility, make sure it meets building codes, fire codes, and any corrective measures have to be addressed prior to opening. After the facility is granted by the City Commission, if we have a penalty clause or evocation clause, if they're become non-compliant based upon the conditions of approval, they would need to correct those immediately, or we could revoke the temporary homeless shelter permit if they are non-compliant. Last requirement would be a summary report by the homeless shelter coordinator. That would be specified within a permanent, either similar to what we did last year. They could do that weekly, monthly, or just an annual, and that would be specified with each of the permits that we do have. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Any questions by commissioners or comments?
Mr. Corton, reading through this, I don't see any fees associated with it, so there are no fees associated with them applying?
At this point, we do not have any. Attorney Colleen and I talked about that. We will probably add it to our schedule. It would be a nominal fee, probably $100, $50 or $100. We're trying to provide a remedy for the homeless, trying to minimize the cost that would be associated with that. That would be something that we need to put on our fee schedule in order to address that.
Yeah, they're taking on the lion's share of the expense of this anyways. I'd hate for us to be adding more fees to the services that they're providing.
Other comments?
If I could,
Mr. Kessel?
President Johnson, this is also one of those groups that we provide a subsidy to each year, so it might be a little redundant to provide a fee and then provide a subsidy
Exactly.
on top.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Colleen, is this 1526?
Yes, Mr. President, 1526.
Okay. Again, if there is someone from the public that would like to comment regarding this proposed ordinance, number 1526, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Anyone from the public?
Mr. President, Commissioners, Ron Dazell. I am the chair of the Dixon Churches United for Homeless. I would just like to say thank you for being proactive and for continuing to work together with us. I was, right before coming, interviewed by the Minot Daily News. Homelessness is a big issue throughout western North Dakota, as we all know. And I'm just very proud to be able to say that in Dickinson, we're all working together. It's not one or the other, it's everybody working together, and I think this is a model for how it ought to be. So thank you for taking the bull by the horns on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Anybody else wish to comment? Okay, no one else from the public. Any other comments or questions by other city staff or city commissioners?
I just have one additional question, Mr. Corton. On the notification, those are sent out by the city, not the applicant, to the people within 300, so it's the city's responsibility to send out.
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Colling, anything you would add?
Under the ordinance as it's currently drafted, the city would generate the list of persons within the 300-foot radius, but it would actually be the applicant's obligation to send those notices out. So they would bear the cost of notifying the public and preparing the notice. That would be part of their application materials.
Okay. Anything else here? So would there be a motion regarding first reading of 1526?
I make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 1526.
Second it.
We have the motion and the second. Other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll go to item E. This is a job description for a chief engineering technician. Mr.
HR Coordinator Nominack will be presenting
Okay.
this item.
Thank you. Welcome, Mrs. Nominack.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Johnson and Commissioners. The job description that we're bringing before you is the Chief Engineering Technician. This is a new position for 2013. We did not have a job description for this position prior to that, so we have put together the job description and the class and are asking your approval of it. The position fell into a Class 4 non-exempt. Exempt. It is an exempt position. Are there any questions regarding the position?
Could you explain why it was necessary to create this job description?
This was the budget from 2013. So I wasn't here at that point, I guess. I guess because of extra duties in the department and.
If I may.
Kessel?
This position is a primary responsibility is one of enforcement and inspection. So they go out into the field and make sure that the SWIP plans, the engineering plans that have been approved by the department are executed in a manner that's consistent with the plans that have been submitted to us. We are planning to have additional staff, so this would actually become a supervisory role, or at least a mentorship role, and hence the title of chief. They also, in the right-of-way, if we do go forward with right-of-way permits, they'll have a role to play within the inspection side and the assignment of duties as it relates to the right-of-way permit issuance.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion regarding this item?
I'll move we approve the job description.
We have the motion and the second. Other discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. It's 5 o'clock. We have a timetable agenda item, and this is a proclamation regarding National Recovery Month from Alcohol and Drug Use Disorders. And I will read the proclamation. Whereas behavioral health is an essential part of health and one's overall wellness, and whereas prevention of mental and/or substance use disorders works, treatment is effective, and people recover in our area and around the nation, and whereas preventing and overcoming mental and/or substance use disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally. And whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with mental and/or substance use disorders to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of a problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support services. And whereas in 2011, 2.3 million people aged 12 or older received specialty treatment for a substance use disorder, and 31.6 million adults aged 18 or older received mental health services, according to the 2011 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Given the serious nature of this public health problem, we must continue to reach the millions more who need help. And whereas on October 1st, 2013, as a result of the Affordable Care Act, more than 11 million uninsured individuals with behavioral health needs will become eligible for affordable insurance coverage for their treatment needs, according to the 2011 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. We must ensure that all of these individuals are successfully enrolled into coverage. And whereas, to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, and the City of Dickinson invite all residents of Dickinson, North Dakota to participate in National Recovery Month. And now, therefore, I, Dennis W. Johnson, President of City Commission, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of Dickinson, North Dakota, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2013 as National Recovery Month in Dickinson, and call upon the people of Dickinson to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies to support this year's Recovery Month. So unless there is objection by my fellow commissioners, we'll therefore declare this as National Recovery Month. So, any objections? All right. I will sign it, and we'll pass it on to the city administrator for his signature also. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak to this issue? Okay, you may do so. Come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Was I supposed to let you read it?
I'm so glad you read that, Dennis, so I don't have to read boring statistics.
Yeah, well, this is not a mistake-free meeting so far, so.
I'm John Wiglenda from Heart River Alcohol and Drug. I'm also a recovering alcoholic of 31 years, and part of this National Recovery Month is to draw notice to people in recovery. The current stat says there's 23 million recovering alcoholics and addicts out there, but their voice is very quiet. I had a clip here and it wouldn't play on your video system, but it was kind of neat. It was a guy being arrested, you know, being a turd, and it was played and his family seen it, and then it was him in recovery. It didn't look the same. And that's one of the things. When we look at addiction, we often think of what somebody's like when they're out using, and it's not a very pretty picture. And then people get sober, you know, and they aren't in a newspaper. They aren't wrapping their car around a light pole. They're just about going about their business, trying to be honest, hardworking people. And so we're voiceless. Part of what we're going to do as a part of this month is we have a new documentary. It's just being released, and we're showing it at the Bichot Activity Center, September 26th, Thursday night at 7 p.m., free admission to anybody. It's entitled The Anonymous People, and that's just what it does. It addresses that. It's very good. It's been shown in Bismarck as part of their recovery month. I did the numbers, and of the individuals seeking help for mental health issues, about 75% got help. But of the individuals seeking help for addiction services, about 18% got help. Pretty low. Now, I don't think that includes North Dakota. I've worked here in this field for 22 years, and one of the things I've learned is we could almost get somebody to get some help. When I was at the state hospital, we had a guy with a third-grade education from Kentucky who was living under a bridge and had pink eye, and that was his total assets. But he got the full treatment. Now, we don't have quite that facility, but we seem to be able to get people in to get some help. And I'm pretty proud of our state for that. In 1940, John D. Rockefeller gave a dinner party. He was giving away his money. And he had sent Willard Richardson to go study this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. And Willard studied him for 6 months or a year, and Alcoholics Anonymous was just 100 people without any money. And he said, this is a worthy cause. It's really a thing. And Rockefeller studied it, and he said, yeah. And so he had this dinner party where he invited his friends from politics and finance and art and culture. And his guests of honor were members of Alcoholics Anonymous who were sober, and he had one at each table. And everybody thought, boy, we're going to get some money not only from Rockefeller, but we're going to get some from these other people. And John D. was sick, so he sent a note with his son. And he said, you know, this thing is too good for money. These guys don't need your money. They just need your goodwill. And they said $1 million, walked out of the room, and everybody's face fell. But John D. Rockefeller gave AA something at that time. He gave him his credibility, and he gave him their tradition of self-support. Because if you support yourself, nobody can influence you from the outside. And AA has celebrated 78 years as a result of that. So basically, you know, I don't want any more than your support. I'm not after your money. It always feels good to be that way. What I wanted to do was do a little bit of the pulse of recovery in Dickinson. And we're really fortunate to live here. Dickinson has 10 AA meetings a week. That's just the city of Dickinson, not the outlying area. And it has 3 NA meetings a week, something new that's come in. So there's a lot of recovery in the groups. And in the AA groups, contrary to the past oil boom, which I lived through, the past oil boom, the rule was, you know, if you worked for somebody, no drugs, no alcohol, no guns, and they ignored them all in their company vehicles. This crew of people comes through, and there's recovering folks at AA meetings, 10, 20, 30 years of sobriety, helping newcomers, sponsoring people. It's really different. It's positive. We always think of the negative. And of course, you know, there's always going to be some of that. In the city of Dickinson, we have Badlands Human Service Center. We have ourselves, Heart River Alcohol and Drug. We have Sakakawea. And ADAPT comes in and offers some classes and some evaluation. There's 7 full-time addiction counselors working in Dickinson, North Dakota, providing services, which is pretty good. We have a full array of services, all the way from the day treatment program with the residential component all the way down. I've worked on the boards of licensing. We have a training consortium here to train counselors because we got a little problem. 60% of our counselors in the state of North Dakota are over 60. That means we're running low. This input with the new health care bill says that 11 million people will come under their umbrella and get services, which translates to 30 to 50,000 people needing addiction services in the state of North Dakota. While at the same time, insurance is trying to slow it down by making it harder and harder for somebody to get services, just the opposite of what the Affordable Health Care Act was going to do. I like working in North Dakota. North Dakota DOT, you get on the phone, you call, you get a live person, a rare thing. In the business side, I see, geez, every state in the union, I swear to God, I have folks coming in. And some foreign countries too, as far away as Mongolia, I had somebody. Most folks coming here love North Dakota. Most of the folks that I see, a majority of the folks that I see come in are cleaning up a legal DUI or something from another state and wouldn't even fit in the category of alcohol dependence. They're pretty happy. Now, there's others that aren't, of course, are in more trouble. Most folks in their home state have far tougher consequences than we have in North Dakota. Yet we have a good system, but every now and then I get somebody that whines, and I say, go check out Colorado, see what would happen if you had a second-time DUI there, because you would be in a program for an entire year, whether or not you were substance dependent. The oil companies are really doing something, and the businesses are. They're doing hair follicle. 3 months history instead of putting somebody else's pee in a jar. They're getting tighter. I worked with Wyoming Casing, for example, who initiated a policy of the 3-month hair follicle every 3 months. So those places have put some things in place to help clean up the patch. Prescription drugs are showing up on the market, not on the market, in our area. About half of my clientele to 3/4 have something something else in addition to alcohol or prescription drugs. Heartview ran a pilot project, and 70% of their people who they checked on the North Dakota pharmacy law, which is something new in North Dakota, and only North Dakota has it, showed up with prescription drug abuse. Where Kurt Schneider from Heartview is presenting at the national conference in Florida this month on the prescription drug monitoring law, where they've put addiction counselors in to have privy to to prescription records, which has really helped us. This state is progressive. We have things we could do. We can always improve things. My clientele is changing. I just ran the stats before I got here. We're down 7% from last year. Everybody says, oh, you must be swamped with this oil boom. We aren't. Things have changed. Folks come in from different methods. Besides DUI, they come in from drug screens. They dispense 29 million pills in North Dakota each year. It's really something. Pills are replacing meth already. So alcohol's still king. Don't kid me. Anyhow, I'm a sucker for happily ever after stories. I love to watch people recover. And all of us here have seen somebody in recovery or know somebody in recovery. And and I know they're a different person. And I think it's so important that we celebrate this month. A little bit of publicity with the proclamation, the documentary for anybody that's interested in coming, just something to draw awareness to where we're at and what's going on pretty quietly and pretty silently, which is pretty neat and pretty humbling, and I think that's a very important thing. So I thank you for your time and your proclamation. I wish you all well.
Well, John, thank you. That your message was very informative and very inspiring, too. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's 5:15. We have another timetable agenda item at 5:15, and this is regarding a Civil Service Commission vacancy. And Mrs. Stavanek, are you presenting this also?
Yes, I am. Civil Service has a vacancy that was left by Commissioner Cal Coling, and Civil Service has voted and is recommending Maren White take that position, or fill that position, and requesting your approval of that. I believe you have her application, or her resume, and citizen interest form in your packet.
We do, yes.
Okay, and she is here if you would like to meet her.
We would. So I actually got to meet Maren at her place of employment here, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we
Yes,
had a nice conversation.
some familiar faces here.
So, do you have a statement that you would like to make?
Well, just thank you, Mr. Johnson, for having me on the agenda. Thank you, Shelley. Just that I'm very interested in serving the community of Dickinson. I will be honest, I don't have public service experience, but my husband and I moved here about a year and a half ago and just fell in love with Dickinson. People were very welcoming us into the community. We had a wonderful experience, and well, several months ago now, I saw there was an article in the paper about positions that were open within the commission, and I was very interested, and I applied, thinking if they are interested in me or don't have any other candidates, perhaps they need people that are interested in serving and that are wanting to serve their community. So I met with the commission one time and sat through one of their meetings. Very interesting. I have a background in management, which a lot of it encompasses HR, and just have an interest in serving in an advisory capacity and also serving the city.
Well, very good, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments here from commissioners?
I think you'll be a great addition to the board.
Well, thank you.
So, can you tell us, you said you moved here, can you tell us where you and your husband came from prior to Dickinson?
Yes, we're originally from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Or that's where I've spent, I guess, the last 7 years prior to moving to Dickinson. And he had an opportunity to come up here a little bit earlier with his line of work, and then I got to stay behind and sell the house and do some of those administrative things when you're planning a move across state lines. And so I came up last May then. Like I stated previously, I had spent 10 years in retail management, and then about 9 months ago I had an amazing opportunity to do a career change, so I took that opportunity, and so we've been here about a year and a half in Dickinson, and just think it's a great small town. A lot of the people that are from here, you hear, that don't think it's so great anymore, but people were truly, truly wonderful to my husband and I when we moved up here. So.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we certainly appreciate your comments about our community.
Well, thank you.
So, Mr. Colling, what we need is a motion then to approve Maren's appointment. Is that what we need?
That's correct, Mr. President. Be a motion to appoint Ms. White to the Civil Service
To
Commission.
appoint, okay.
I would make that motion.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Okay, here comes the tough part now, the vote. Let's see how this goes. So, Mr. Oltman,
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
chair votes aye. It's unanimous. So,
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for volunteering to do this. It's an important job, and we appreciate you taking an interest in it, very much so.
I look forward to starting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else there? All right. Well, then I think we're back to reports. And first item there is the Human Resource Hiring Journal. So, Mrs. Nomnock, it's a busy
I'm
night for
back.
you.
Yeah. Okay, I have the, hiring journal for August. We're still, as you can see, struggling for street maintenance operators. We recently had gone through the hiring process, interviewed several applicants, and were not able to hire at that point. And then we lost a half-time person, so now we're up to 3.5 positions. However, we did fill our street and fleet operations manager position, and we'll have him starting next week. So we're hoping he can help us out with some of those open positions we've got there. Sanitation operator, we had 2 openings and they've both been filled. They both were filled, but then we promoted one of our operators to a chief position, so left open another operator position, and we're in the interview process, and we'll start that tomorrow. Sanitation laborer position recently closed, and we did fill that position. Sanitation supervisor, as I mentioned earlier, we did fill that position internally. However, we just opened a new position not long ago for the operations side, and that individual has already resigned with us, so the position's back open again. Assistant city engineer, we will be doing our interview process next week. Have a couple applicants that we'll be interviewing for that. City forester was recently filled. Custodian, we have 2 custodian positions, one for the library and one for the new public works facility, and we are in the process of doing those interviews right now. Police officer openings, we have 3 openings. 2 offers were made, and the backgrounds are being processed right now. The other position, the position actually just closed on Friday, and we'll be starting the interviews for that one. And then part-time library assistant, she just finished up the interviews for that and is hoping to make an offer there. Library director, looks like I have a wrong date on there. That closes the 18th. So I've got a couple more days on that one before that closes. Got lots of good applicants for that position.
No, is everybody on the commission aware that our librarian is retiring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she will be working through the end of the year, through November, and then vacationing December. So.
Any questions or comments for Mrs. Nominick? All right, thank you for the
Okay,
report.
thank you.
We know the job is in this economic environment we have here of low unemployment and lots of well-paying jobs, that you have a formidable challenge ahead of you, constantly recruiting and interviewing and hiring, and we appreciate your efforts very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll continue with reports, and Mr. Kessel, we'll hear yours.
Thank you, President Johnson. Commission, my report this evening is about a liquor license request. We have had a request that the City Commission review our current classes of license that we offer to include a beer and wine off-sale license. We currently offer 8 different classes of liquor licenses. We issued, in 2013, we've issued licenses in 5 of those 8 classes. In terms of those, I'll just like to explain what those classes are, from least restrictive to most restrictive. And when I use that terminology, the restriction is the expectations that we have of the people who hold that license. The first is the on and off sale license. We have 17 of those licenses. They are limited to 17 and limited by population. 8 of those are traditionally what people would think of as bars, and 9 of those are what people would traditionally think of as off sales. Then we have a lodge or club license. We issue 3 lodge and or club licenses, and to be able to get those 3 have been issued for quite some time, and they're non-transferable. Those are issued to the St. Anthony Club, the Eagles Club, and the Elks Lodge. The next is the motel and hotel licenses. These are a on and off sale that can be granted to any hotel or motel that has 75 or more rooms that they rent. We do have 4 licenses issued in that category, and those 3 categories all have the same fee schedule. On-off sale, commercial liquor licenses, lodge or club, and motel and hotel have the same fees. The next is the restaurant on-sale licenses. These are not limited by population. The only limit that they have is that liquor sales they shall not exceed 50% of total gross sales. So you have to sell more food than you do liquor, and then you can get this type of a license. We have issued several of those licenses in town, about 13 or so that are active. The next is military club and beer and wine licenses. We do not have any of those active in the city of Dickinson at this time. The next being the microbrewery license. We did have one of these licenses issued in the past, but we currently don't have any. In order to hold a microbrewery license, you have to hold a restaurant license as well, but it does allow you to provide off sales of the beer that you brew in that environment. The next is a beer and wine, and that's for on-sale beer and wine sales. We do have 2 entities within the community that have the beer and wine, and then the last is restaurant beer only, and we don't have any of those actively issued to anyone in the city of Dickinson right now. And what that allows you to do is just to sell beer on-site in a restaurant. So those are the classes that we have. Those are kind of the one that's being asked is a beer and wine for off-sale purposes. So in other words, anybody who would become eligible would be able to sell beer and wine in an off-sale environment. The request has come from a potential building that would be in town, like a truck stop, essentially, or a gas station environment, where they would like to construct the facility and then offer this as a product. So I wanted to bring this to the commission to find out what your thoughts are. There's certainly a lot of questions that need to be thought of. We don't need any answers tonight, but certainly present it to you. If the license class is created, I think some of the things that need to be considered is, should they be limited? Should they not be limited? Fee schedule, what kind of fee should it fall within the rest? What would be the effect on existing license holders, because their licenses would be impacted in some way, and distribution. If it is limited, in what way should we issue those licenses? Certainly existing ordinance can be referred to answer some of those questions, but I wanted to at least throw it out and see what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. He's looking for some reaction, some feedback. Is there any reaction here?
This would mean that we could license a grocery store?
Yes, that does. In fact, we are, in essence, have a grocery store already licensed under a different classification.
But only under our restricted.
Yes. They currently own a on and off sale license. It's under the 17.
And they would have a separate facility for that. It wouldn't be within the.
That's correct. They have to have
separate entrance.
4 walls.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this would be more similar to in South Dakota, where in a convenience store you can buy beer or wine right next to the pop and the milk and.
That's certainly a possibility. Now, you as a commission can put certain regulations where that isn't that accessible, where it would have to be separated in some capacity. That falls within your purview.
But the idea would be convenience stores, truck stops, and other retail outlets that would want to.
That's the one that's requested us to take a look at it. Yes.
Mr. Colling, are there any restrictions by state law here regarding this issue?
In general, Mr. President, no. The state issues a license to individuals as well to sell alcohol, but the state license is essentially unlimited. Any restrictions that we would want to place on an applicant for city purposes are more or less at your discretion. You can create the type of licenses and the restrictions that you deem appropriate for each class. You don't have to issue any licenses. If you do not wish to do so, you can issue them in whatever classes and with whichever restrictions on them that you deem appropriate.
Are there any other communities in North Dakota right now that are offering this type of license?
You know, I do think it varies a lot by community. I do think, I shouldn't speak without doing the research on it, but I know I have been in convenience stores where they do offer some off-sale product, mostly in larger communities. But those restrictions are at your discretion for whichever way you would like to go.
Wouldn't your convenience store types, wouldn't they need to have an employee 21 years old in order to sell?
Commissioner Snyder, yes, in order to sell alcohol, they would need to be over 21 years of age, or at least have somebody over 21 years of age supervising somebody who is underage at that facility.
So same way with the grocery store. If it's in a grocery store, a young kid couldn't pick it up and go through, and or he's got a buddy who's 18, and we'd have a problem with that.
His buddy would have to be 21.
Exactly.
Or could you just have a restriction, just truck stops only?
Yeah, those restrictions are at your discretion. We'd have to figure out exactly how you would want to define what a truck stop is, or a gas station, or a convenience store, but there are ways to do that. If that's a restriction that you want to place on the class, you're entitled to do that.
I guess I'd be interested in you doing the research of other communities that are offering this. I'm drawing a blank as to any other community I've been in North Dakota where you could pick up beer or wine at a convenience store. You know, I know it's prevalent when you go to South Dakota. It always strikes me like, oh yeah, you can do that here. But I really, for the life of me, can't think of another community in North Dakota that is offering this.
They have them in Montana, all over.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I really can't think of any place else here in North Dakota. Fargo, Bismarck, Mike?
It's funny they don't.
Can you?
I can't either.
I can't.
We had a little bit of an issue with selling of alcohol to underage, and I think our on and off sale commercial liquor license holders have done a much better job of policing that now with their own employees. And I think when we've done our random checks, we've found much better results. We have 17 establishments that have on and off sale, and as we discussed in our budget meeting today briefly, that we think we're of the population levels where we could issue another one, and we're actually making plans to do that in 2014. I think if we had 18, it's readily available in the city for those who are of legal age to purchase it, and I think we have a pretty responsible group right now in terms of monitoring who they sell to. My concern would be if we open this up further, it just makes it so much easier for minors to get illegal alcohol, or get alcohol illegally, I guess would be the correct way to say that.
Well, you look at how we do our cigarette sales monitoring, and it seems like we have an issue with that every year, and that's for 18 and younger, and that's cigarettes, add alcohol too. And you look at the fees that we collect from the license renewals, about $100,000 a year, which barely covers, one police officer, which this is more labor intensive than that. Boy, I just can't imagine being the first community to go down this road in North Dakota. It would definitely be uncharted territory for North Dakota for us to be, the first community to start off. That's a big leap to take from, policing and checking on, are the sales going to people 21 and over. There's a whole lot of things that go into having this available in so many more locations. It can be done, but it would take a lot of work on probably an already stretched staff to incorporate this at this time.
I'm reluctant to support it.
Okay.
Is there any other feedback?
Well, I tend to agree, and I find myself wondering if we're not missing something. We've got communities that I believe have unrestricted numbers of on and off sale license, I think, aren't there, in North Dakota? So they're that much more liberal than we are. And yet, I think Mr. Oldman's right. I don't think those communities do this.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me wonder, but I would tend to agree.
I'd like to hear what Chief Dossinger thinks.
So, Chief Dossinger, you've been summoned to the podium.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I guess I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is uncharted territory. I think that wouldn't be a good time for our community to go down that road right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Chief, do you know of, there isn't any other community in North Dakota that offers this, is there?
I guess I'd have to see the layout of the business plans. There are convenience stores in North Dakota where you can purchase alcoholic beverages, but they're in a separate place.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure what the plan or the layout of this business would be.
Okay.
There's a truck stop in Bismarck that you can do exactly
Correct.
what
Okay.
Chief Dossinger is talking about.
And I believe
Okay.
there's a convenience store in Bowman which you can do the same.
Okay.
Anything else for the chief?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other feedback?
It appears what I'm hearing from the commission is that you're not interested in creating a second class, but you may, if they buy the potentially available license that we're talked about in 14. How would that apply to a situation like this? Would they be allowed or able under that ordinance to?
Mr. Kessel, Commissioners, under our current ordinance, the procedure you've formulated in order to issue an additional on-off sale license, essentially to do it by bid, that those parties interested in the license can come in and bid for that license. If we do have an individual who operates a convenience store or truck stop who bids for that license, I believe they would be entitled to construct their facility and include that a segregated area or a separate area for the sale of alcohol and off sale. Unless there is something in Century Code that prohibits that, which I don't believe there is, they'd be entitled to operate that license at a truck stop or at a gas station.
It might be overkill for what they're wanting to do because they're just requesting the beer and wine, but then they would have the full availability of selling everything.
That's correct.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming they would have to construct it similar to what we required of Walmart, where there's a separate outdoor entrance to it, that you just can't go inside a Walmart and drift into the beverage store.
It would have to be segregated in some manner, yes.
I mean, any of our current 17 holders, if they decided they just wanted to sell beer and wine, I imagine they could do that. They're not required to offer the full array of spirits.
Yes, that's correct.
I think what I heard was there was some interest in maybe you, staff doing some research to see just how prevalent this is in other cities. And I think inherent in that request is you'd want to hear their comments on how it's working for them and if they would do anything different. And then I think the other thing that I think we heard was that there probably is not a lot of support for doing this, but, you know, I would say maybe based upon the information that came back, you might have commissioners that, you know, might show some support, but.
We'll do some research and bring it back to you at a later date then. And I'll add, of course, construction limitations that they may have if they are doing it as well.
Do you have other items you wish to report on that aren't listed here?
I do, Commissioner Johnson. Thank you very much. I actually have a couple different things. The first is I wanted to just give a brief report. I did attend the North Dakota League of Cities Conference this weekend in Bismarck. It was held Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There was a couple very good sessions. One that the DOT did on urban roads funding. There was another one that I attended on the initiated constitutional petition related to Clean Water, Wildlife, and Park Trust Fund. I actually distributed for you on your desks a white paper that was done on this potential constitutional petition. As I understand it, the groups that are actively seeking signatures to put this on the ballot. What I'll try to do is just go through the white paper briefly. Conservative groups and wildlife groups are currently circulating petitions to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot. The amendment would create a special fund for wildlife and conservation groups to receive funding from the oil and gas tax revenue. What they're requesting is a 5% of all oil and gas extraction tax that's collected by the state would be designated to this fund. Under current oil production, that would mean that it would generate about $150 million a biennium, or $75 million a year. The money itself would be mandated to be spent, 75% of all collections have to be spent within a year, but not more than 90. If the predictions are accurate with regard to revenue that would go into the fund, that means that they would spend $200,000 a day on their projects for the next 10 years. This money can be granted to state agencies, tribal governments, local governments, political subdivisions, and nonprofits. Since it's being organized by the Nature Conservancy, the Sierra Club, Dakota Resource Council, and Ducks Unlimited, of course, the thought is that a lot of those dollars would go to those groups themselves. It cannot be used for lobbying, litigation, or taking land by eminent domain, or disrupting the development of mineral rights. The money would be managed by a conservancy commission. It'd be made up of the governor, the attorney general, and the agricultural commissioner, and then a citizens accountability board. That citizens accountability board would provide recommendations to the conservancy commission. Now, at this last legislative session, a Outdoor Heritage Trust Fund was created when the law was passed and signed by the governor. It was House Bill 1278. That does allocate $15 million a year towards conservation efforts. So there is a recent law that is going to provide dollars to similar activities in North Dakota. That's active. And that board, the Outdoor Heritage Trust Fund Board, has been appointed by the governor and is working on how to adequately dispense $15 million. So I just wanted to make sure that the City Commission and anybody else in the public who is approached to sign this petition is fully aware of what they're signing and what potentially this creation of this type of a fund would do. Obviously, when you take 5% of oil and gas extraction taxes, part of our funding that we get from the state is using that same funding stream. Now, how it would impact us specifically is difficult to determine, but I think we can all make an educated guess on how it potentially could impact us. So unless there's any questions, I just wanted to make sure that you as a commission were educated at least on the fact that these petitions are going around and that this is how the money could be spent. I also attended another meeting on bonding, a large city finance meeting where we had representatives from Doherty and Company present to us on bonding. The bonding environment is an interesting one. The rate environment specifically is one of a rising rate environment. You know, I've got a couple charts I can distribute for you that show the rising environment, especially of late, both from a shorter time frame. This one goes back several months, but essentially it's the same. Is that the bonding environment is the rates are going up. We just recently sold our bonds on the 30th of this month. We'll close on those bonds. We received an interest rate of 3.94% on those bonds. If we would have sold those even 6 months ago, we probably would have saved 50 basis points. And that's a guess, but based on the information that the graphs that you're seeing, we could have easily saved some basis points for sure. So we didn't have any issues selling the bonds for the West River Community Center. But in the future, if the environment is predicted by Doherty and Company to come to fruition, they expect that most bonds of a short-term nature, between 10 and 15 years, you'll see an environment there of a 3 to 5% interest rate being applied to those bonds, depending, of course, upon your bond rating and if they're insured and such. So maybe we should be happy we bonded when we did, since the environment is supposed to continue to rise in the future. So, President Johnson, that would conclude my reports unless there's questions about any of the materials that I've presented this evening.
Any comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessel. We'll go to Public Works. Mr. Zuroff, do you have any things to report on?
President Johnson, Commission, I have a couple items. I too was at a conference last week in Mandan, actually. It was Solid Waste Symposium. It was a three-state Department of Health symposium on solid waste. And I guess one of the things I wanted to mention was that there was a leadership award given from the North Dakota Department of Health, and Aaron Prowse, our division manager, got the leadership award for management of landfills and innovation. So I was pretty proud of him, and Dickinson should be as well. Also, as Shelley's presentation tonight, we did make an offer for a new street fleet manager. Starts next week. I hope that'll be the start of good things in that division, and hopefully we can increase the applicants and maybe get some of those positions filled. Also, I guess I wanted to thank the Commission for touring the couple of big projects this afternoon. As you know, we have many more projects to come, and I think I hope it was good for you to go out and actually see some of these projects. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, I think first, on behalf of the Commission, it's really great news to hear about Aaron Prowse's Leadership Award. You know, please convey to him our congratulations and our appreciation for the job that he's doing there. It's like everyone in the city, their jobs are certainly more demanding today than they were just a few years ago, and that is very true of solid waste.
Correct.
So, again, congratulate them and tell them thank you.
Yep, we'll pass it on.
So, I'd invite commissioners to share your reaction to this afternoon of going out and looking at the Public Works building, the new animal shelter, and then we went over to the wastewater treatment facility. So if you have any reaction to those, please go ahead and share that.
Well, I think, especially for the sewage treatment facility, I don't think we realize just what a state-of-the-art facility we're really going to have that really is going to take care of us for a long time to come. And the fact that we were able to do it, or are able to do it in the process of doing it, so that we're not building it out completely. We're only building it out to handle near-term projections of populations, but the ability to expand it significantly more. Public needs to know that, and very impressive.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think each of the facilities were just very, very impressive. Public Works building is going to go a long ways for production, morale, I think, retaining employees, housing equipment, the new animal shelter in conjunction with it. I was just blown away by all three of the facilities. They are something to be very proud of as a community and as a commission moving forward, too.
And these are projects we've been working on. I think we started them even before 2008, before Sean and I came on board. Long time. It's nice to see them up.
Well, the wastewater treatment facility, yeah, that started quite some time ago, and of course we started down the path of really staying with the lagoon system and modifying that. But as our population projections became larger and larger, we ended up making the decision to switch to the mechanical plant. And I remember in a city meeting, Mr. Creton pointing out that one of the advantages of a mechanical plant is that it opened up so many more economic development opportunities to you that you can't do with the lagoon system. And we have a great example now with the refinery that this mechanical plant can support the refinery with reprocessed water, which we couldn't do with the lagoon system. So I suspect we will see other opportunities in the future, economic development opportunities, because of that plant.
Yes. I would agree with you,
Yeah.
President Johnson.
So it was a good afternoon. I think we all enjoyed it. I think we'd like to go back in a few months when even more has been done, and maybe we have a little more time to be out there. Mr. Kessel?
We'll be happy to take you out in January again.
And maybe then there'll be some more projects to look at too, because we're continually awarding those.
Yep.
Well, it was 103 degrees and windy the day that we cut the ribbon on the water treatment facility, and I think it was 20 below when we went to the shoveling of the medical clinic. So we've been to every extreme as a commission, Mr. Kessel.
January will be just fine if you want to put it on your calendar. So.
You got to remember, we're true North Dakotans.
Very true. I underestimate.
Anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay. So we'll go to community development, but Ed will have to interrupt when 6 o'clock comes so we can have our budget hearing, okay?
Okay, Mr. President, Commissioners, the first rezoning petition tonight is from rural residential to community commercial for a project that's approximately 6 acres and located at the northeast corner of the intersection of 21st Street and 21st Street and State Avenue. The Planning and Zoning Commission to recommend approval contingent upon the 4 conditions of approval that are attached with the adopting ordinance. There are no changes from the first reading, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Creton. This is Second reading of ordinance 1521. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding this proposed ordinance, you may do so now. Come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. There is no one from the public that wishes to comment. Are there any other comments by city staff or city commissioners?
Mr. President, move to approve second reading and final passage ordinance 1521.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next rezoning petition is from Ag and Community Commercial to Plan Unit Development. The project size is approximately 93 acres. It's located west of the I-90 bypass or business loop and south of the interstate. Planning and Zoning Commission and city staff recommend approval contingent upon the attached 21 conditions of approval. There are no changes from the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Catan. This is the second reading of ordinance 1522. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding this proposed ordinance, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, we'll hear your comments. Anybody from the public? There's no one from the public. Any comments by city staff or city commissioners?
Mr. President, I'll move we approve second reading of 1522.
Second it.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Go to item B there then.
The next item is item B. This is an amendment to the zoning code to add a new provision for accessory dwelling units in commercial districts. This is in response to the high cost of living to provide a temporary means for employees located within commercial buildings. This permit would be reviewed administratively by the Community Development Director. There are no changes from the first reading, and city staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Catan. The second reading of ordinance 1524. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment regarding this proposed ordinance, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. There is no one from the public. Are there any other comments from city staff or city commissioners? Not as
President, move to
Mr.
approve
Steiner.
second and final passage of ordinance 1524.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we will vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Mr. President, I'll highlight the end of August building report, building permit report. Under commercial permits, we are ahead of last year from 46 to 42. Single-family structures, we are significantly behind from last year, roughly 55%, from 230 to compared to 417 from last year. Multifamily-wise, we're closer. As of the end of that month, we're at 267 dwelling units compared to 298. And then total housing units were at 494 compared to 781, roughly 63% from last year. A bright spot is the new building permit values. As of the end of August, we're at 246 million compared to 172 million from last year, roughly 31% increase. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions specifically. I do have one additional note. I have a report from the June North Dakota Association of Builders, and it compares 10 cities within North Dakota. It talks about number of permits and evaluation. As of June, the month of June, City of Dickinson was rated number 5 with permit totals, and number 3 with evaluation at evaluation of 37 million. Year to date, at the end of June, Dickinson was number 5 with the total number of permits, but number 2 in valuation. So our valuation is holding steady from last year. Compared to the other cities, you could see a little bit of a downward trend for the others as well, but you know, our numbers are reflective of various means that are happening, and but the key is that our valuation totals are exceeding from last year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crouton. Are there any comments or questions for him?
I just have one, Mr. Corton. How's the heritage permit coming?
Offhand, I couldn't tell you specifically where it's at. I know that they're part of the review. I couldn't comment on. I'm not involved in the day-to-day of that, but I could check and let you know tomorrow if you like.
Would you, please? Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, it's 6 o'clock. We have a public hearing scheduled at 6 o'clock on the 2014 budget. Anyone that wishes to comment on the proposed budget, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Is there anyone from the public? There is no one from the public that wishes to comment, so we'll declare the public hearing closed. And we'll move on to tab 9, which are city commission reports. Are there any reports by commissioners? Hearing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the commission? If so, you may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments.
Mr. President, I'd like those young gentlemen to come up and just tell me who they are and what troop they belong to, and just introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. I assume these are Boy Scouts.
My name is Reed Johnson, and we are all from Troop 32 in Dickinson, North Dakota. We're here for the Citizenship and the Community Merit Badge, and one of the requirements is to visit a city commission meeting and take notes during the meeting, and if we have an issue that we found significant, to write a report on it afterwards. So that's why we're here.
And on your shirt, you are a Life Scout?
Yes.
That's how I picked up on that, Mayor.
You did you did very well, Commissioner
I won't
Steiner.
recognize the eagle, but I do recognize the life.
Okay. Who's next here?
My name is Colin Shook. I'm here for the same reason.
Your second class?
I'm actually Life.
Life? You haven't changed, put your patch on yet?
I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay.
I'm Jaden Krebs, also here for the same reason.
Okay.
I'm Philip Jacobs, also here for the same reason.
Well, welcome.
I'm Jimmy Hicks, and I'm here for the same reason.
Okay. Say, sir, excuse me, could you come back and just face that young lady to your right?
Yeah.
There you go. She,
Jimmy, what was your last name? Nix
Jimmy
or
Hicks.
Nix or Ricks?
Hicks.
Hicks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You can tell your fellow scouts that she only wanted a photograph of the best looking scout, so. That was you.
Don't go into show business, Mayor.
Well, thank you for being here. Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to appear before the commission? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.